All right, welcome everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive on something pretty interesting, sex education. You guys sent in some fascinating sources, and I'm really excited to dig into them with our expert here.
Yeah.
We'll be exploring all sides of this, the biology, the psychology, even how society views it all.
Yeah, it's really interesting how we often think of sex just in terms of biology, like having kids, but it's so much more complex than that. Human sexuality, it's really tied into emotions, relationships, and even how our culture understands who we are.
Right. One of the sources you shared, actually, it was a YouTube video by a health coach, Caro, I think her name was. She really made me think about how men and women can view sex so differently. Like she was saying how for a lot of men it's more of a physical thing at first, but for women it's really tied to emotions and that closeness.
Yeah, that's a big point, and research backs it up too. Men often have a stronger, more immediate physical drive,
Yeah.
with the testosterone and all. So their arousal
So
might.
broad, so broad. We are not just talking. I feel like at some point, I don't know about the other religions, but Christianity, we made it feel it's a sin, it's a bad thing, it's all these things. But now that we are awakening to it, to see all the aspects of sex, we are being able to appreciate it and to appreciate where we come from. But if we go back to the basic, the raw part, where did we come from? Were it not for that sex, we would not have been here. So it's important for us to talk about it so that we can even have these conversations with our children. I am a mother. I started this conversation with my daughter when she was 6 because they know more than we think that they know. She keeps laughing at me. I tell her that when we were growing up, if my mother would have imagined I've talked to
And
her.
how even little kids show signs of curiosity about sex. Like as young as 6 or 9, they're already exploring the differences between boys and girls.
That's true. And, we shouldn't freak out about it. It's
Well,
normal for kids to be curious, especially as their bodies change. They're taking in everything around them.
uh,
And that includes the differences between genders.
so instead of trying to avoid those conversations, it sounds like we should be giving them information that's right for their age, guidance and stuff right from when they're young.
Definitely. Teaching kids about sex early on, it's not about pushing them to be sexually active. It's about helping them develop healthy attitudes and really understand their own bodies. Then, as they get older, it sets them up to be able to talk openly about all this.
Makes sense. And this all goes back to understanding how men and women experience things differently. If we don't have that knowledge, how can we even begin to navigate relationships in a healthy way?
Right. And it's not just about avoiding misunderstandings, it's about creating a deeper intimacy and really enjoying the experience. When you understand your partner's needs and desires, the whole thing becomes more fulfilling and satisfying for both of you.
Totally. Now let's talk about something that often has a lot of myths surrounding it, the orgasm. Carol was really clear about this in her video. Men don't give women orgasms. Women allow themselves to have them.
Yeah, that's a powerful statement, and it speaks to female empowerment. If a man gives a woman an orgasm, it makes it sound like the woman is just passive. But the truth is, women are active participants in their own pleasure.
I remember she used this analogy talking about a doorway to orgasm, like there's a whole process involved.
Yeah, that's a helpful way to think about it. For a lot of women, it takes more than just the physical stuff to reach orgasm. They need to feel safe, connected, and aroused both physically and emotionally. And they need to understand their own bodies, know what feels good, and be able to communicate that to their partner.
So it's not just about getting to the finish line, it's about enjoying the whole journey, right?
Absolutely. It's about being in the moment, really feeling the sensations, and letting yourself experience all the pleasure.
And that's where being able to talk openly with your partner is so important, right? Being able to tell them what feels good, what doesn't, and what you need to feel comfortable and turned on.
You got it. Without open communication, it's like trying to find your way through a maze blindfolded. You might stumble on some good spots, but you're probably not going to find the best path.
Uh-huh. I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Speaking of pleasure, one of the most surprising things Carol mentioned was that women can have multiple orgasms without even being touched. What's the science behind that?
It does sound crazy, right? But it shows just how powerful the female body is and how connected our minds and bodies really are. For some women, mental stimulation, fantasies, even memories can trigger the same physical responses as actual touch.
Wow. So it's really about experiencing sensuality in all its forms, not just focusing on the physical sensation.
Exactly. And that opens up so many possibilities for exploring pleasure and intimacy both on your own and with a partner.
We've been talking about all the differences between how men and women experience sex and how important it is to communicate to really have a good experience. But it can't always be perfect, right?
Mhm.
We need to talk about what can happen if you're not informed or if you make unsafe choices.
That's really important. It's great to talk about all the good parts of sex, the joy and the pleasure, but we can't forget about the risks, especially for younger people who are just starting to figure things out.
Kara was pretty upfront about that in her video. She talked about STDs and how important it is to be safe.
Yeah.
She even said parents should bring home condoms and actually show their kids how to use them.
It might sound kind of out there,
Yeah.
but I get where she's coming from. Knowledge and knowing what to do are so important for making smart decisions. We can't just tell young people don't have sex and expect that to be enough. They need the facts and they need to know how to actually protect themselves.
Yeah, it's about giving them the power to make their own choices instead of scaring them or making them feel ashamed.
Right. And that also means understanding that sex can be complicated emotionally. It's not just a physical thing. It can really affect how you feel mentally and emotionally.
I remember she told a story about a client who was struggling with an addiction to masturbation
Yeah.
and started really young because they were exposed to porn.
That's something we're seeing more and more, and it just shows how important it is to have open conversations about healthy sexuality. Porn can give a really distorted and unrealistic view of sex, and that can lead to people having the wrong expectations and even developing unhealthy behaviors.
So what can we do about it? Should we try to keep young people from seeing porn?
It's hard to block everything in this day and age. I think it's more effective to teach them how to think critically about what they see, help them understand that porn is fantasy and not reality, and encourage them to talk about what they're experiencing and what worries them.
Yeah, it's about creating a safe space where they can talk about these things instead of pretending they don't exist.
Exactly. We need to stop being so quiet and ashamed about sex. The more we talk about it openly and honestly, the better prepared young people will be to make good choices for themselves.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But even as an adult, sometimes I wonder, what's considered normal when it comes to sex? Is there even such a thing?
A lot of people ask that. And the truth is there's no right answer. It's different for everyone. It depends on your needs, your relationship, your stage of life, and even your culture.
So comparing yourself to other people or those stories you hear from friends, it's kind of pointless then.
Totally. What matters is that you and your partner can talk openly and understand each other's desires and boundaries and find a rhythm that works for both of you.
It's about finding what feels good for you as a couple, not trying to fit into some idea of what's normal that someone else made up.
Exactly. Remember, sex isn't a competition. It's not about performing. It's about intimacy, connection, and enjoying yourselves together.
Now let's switch gears for a bit and talk about something that really got me thinking. That idea of sexual energy. Carol mentioned that it can be affected by things that happened in your past and even the people you choose to be with. How does that work?
That gets into the more subtle, energetic side of sexuality. Think of it this way. We all carry the energy of our past experiences, both good and bad, in our bodies and in our energy field.
So it's like those past relationships and experiences leave an energetic mark on us.
In a way, yeah. And when you have sex, there's an exchange of that energy with your partner, and that can affect your emotions, how you feel about yourself, and even your physical health.
That's intense. So choosing partners who are emotionally healthy and who share your values is really important then.
It's definitely something to think about. It's not about judging anyone's energy as good or bad. It's about being aware of what energy you're letting into your life and making sure it's good for you and helps you grow.
This makes me think about how important it is to heal from past traumas and negative experiences.
You're right. If we haven't dealt with and healed from those past hurts, we might unconsciously bring that energy into new relationships. And that can make it harder to really connect and experience true intimacy.
It's like bringing your emotional baggage into the bedroom with you.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And that brings us back to what Kara was saying about the spiritual side of sex. It's not just a physical act. It's an energetic exchange that can have a deep impact on us in many ways.
So how can we become more aware of these energetic dynamics?
Which
Is it about things like meditation or energy work?
it can be. But it starts with paying attention to how you feel before, during, and after sex. Noticing any patterns or feelings that keep coming up that might be signs of something you haven't dealt with yet.
It's about listening to your intuition and your body.
Exactly. And being open to trying different things that resonate with you, like therapy, energy healing, or spiritual exploration.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening. And I feel like you're just scratching the surface of this complex and fascinating topic.
There's definitely more to explore. And as we go deeper into these less talked about parts of sexuality, it's important to approach them with curiosity. an open mind, and a willingness to question what we think we know.
I couldn't agree more. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, let's take a moment for you, our listener, to reflect on what we've discussed so far. What's standing out to you? What's making you curious? Take a minute to jot down your thoughts, because we're going to be diving into even more interesting territory in part 3 of our exploration of sex education. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into sex education. Man, we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From the biological differences between men and women to how important communication is, and even that whole thing about sexual energy. It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, it really has. And it just goes to show you sex education isn't just about the birds and the bees. It's about understanding ourselves, our partners, and really how we connect on an intimate level.
One of the things that stuck with me from Caro's video was how much she emphasized the female experience. Like, she was saying women don't need men to give them orgasms. It's more about women giving themselves permission to feel that pleasure.
Yeah, it's all about empowering women, reminding them that they have control over their own bodies and their own pleasure.
Yeah.
It's about shifting the focus from needing someone else's approval to really exploring and understanding yourself.
And remember that analogy she used about the doorway to orgasm. It's like it's not just a switch you flip on, but a whole journey of exploring and discovering.
That's such a great way to think about it. It really highlights how important it is to be self-aware, to communicate, and to actively participate in creating a truly fulfilling sexual experience.
So it's not just about the destination, it's about enjoying the whole trip, right?
Exactly. And that journey can be so enriching, both for individuals and for couples. It's about learning to talk about what you need, exploring what feels good, and expanding your capacity for pleasure.
You know, Caro also talked about something I found pretty interesting. The idea that taking a break from sex for a while can actually be beneficial.
Oh, yeah. She mentioned that some people find they have more clarity, more peace of mind, and even a stronger immune system when they abstain from sex for a period of time.
It sounds kind of counterintuitive, but when you think about it, it makes sense. If we're always focused on sex, maybe we're not giving ourselves enough space to process our emotions or connect with ourselves on a deeper level.
It's like hitting the reset button for your mind and body. It can be a chance to explore other kinds of intimacy and connection, both with yourself and with other people in your life.
Right, so it's not about saying sex is bad or that abstinence is the only way. It's about realizing that different choices can be helpful at different points in our lives.
Exactly. It's about being aware of what you need and making choices that support your overall well-being.
Man, this whole conversation has been a real eye-opener. It's like we went from Sex Ed 101 to a PhD course in the span of an hour.
And I think that's what's so cool about these deep dives. They push us to go beyond the surface level and explore all the different aspects of human sexuality.
Sure. You know, before we wrap up, I want to touch on one more thing Carol mentioned that really resonated with me. She talked about how societal conditioning can influence our sexual experiences. It makes me wonder, are we really making choices based on what we want? Or are we just following scripts we've learned from our culture?
That's a big question, and it deserves a lot more thought. There's no doubt that the way we're raised, the norms of our culture, and even what we see in the media, they all shape how we view sex and relationships.
So how can we break free from those pre-programmed scripts and start making choices that truly reflect our own values and desires?
Well, it starts with becoming aware. Take a look at what you believe about sex. Question where those beliefs came from, and ask yourself if they're really working for you.
So it's about being the author of your own sexual experiences instead of just acting out a role that someone else wrote for you.
Exactly. And it's a journey, a process of self-discovery that can lead to deeper intimacy, more pleasure, and a greater sense of fulfillment.
This deep dive has been amazing, and I feel like I've gained a whole new understanding of sex education.
Me too. It's been great exploring all this with you.
And to all of you listening, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to keep learning about the amazing world of human sexuality. Remember, there's always more to learn,